If I had $1 for every time I have restarted making this episode, I could be drinking Starbucks right now instead of my house-made tea. But anyways, hi, my name is Ashlyn and welcome to the AISFORASHLYN podcast. Welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. And on this show, we're going to be diving deeper into all things why in the classroom. And what I mean by why is why we make certain choices that we do as teachers, as educators, down to our management systems, down to how we create engaging lessons, how we talk to families. My honest goal is just for this, I don't even know, like this show to be a resource and be helpful for different teachers. I know myself, a few years ago, I was struggling so bad in the classroom to the point where I wanted to leave not only just teaching, but the profession in general. Getting up every day was such a struggle going into work. By the grace of God, move out of that point in my life to a spot now where I truly do enjoy going to work every day. I want to share some strategies that have helped me do that along the way that will hopefully help you. And I just honestly want this to be a resource, to be a positive place where you can go and kind of refill your cup, because I know that we're always so busy pouring into others as a teacher. So with that being said, on this first episode, I want to give you an idea of where I want to take this podcast. And after we do that, we're going to go into how we can start the 2023 school year in a positive way and go back better, go back with less anxiety than we had before. So topics we're going to cover are going to be how you instill a more conscious-based management system in your classroom, how you can reduce your anxiety in the classroom, different hacks to engage your kids and build relationships. And I'm also looking forward to having a few different guests come on the podcast as well. This first couple of episodes is going to dive pretty deeply into classroom management and breaking it down. Spoiler alert, the management system that we're going to be talking about, and honestly my entire approach to management, is not going to be like you give a kid a sticker or a point or a whatever for doing something good. It's not going to be any of that stuff. It's going to be more about developing the intrinsic motivation to make good choices. So if that's something you're interested in, these next few episodes are going to be right up your alley. But we're also going to talk about things like family communication, how to make engaging lessons, how to connect with your students. And honestly, I'm going to probably open up Instagram and ask you guys for different ideas for episodes as well. Like I said, I really want this to be a resource for you and be something that serves you. That's kind of what the podcast is going to be focusing on for the time being. In terms of this episode, it's going to be all about how we can go back to school better with less anxiety in the 2023 school year with a few quick hacks I've kind of channeled for myself over the years. So I know I mentioned briefly that I had a tough season in teaching, and during that season, honestly, just like getting up every day was a struggle, but especially after weekends and after breaks, like the Sunday Scaries were so strong. So these are some things I've started doing, honestly, a few years back that I've carried with me since then, and they really make it a lot easier to go back to the classroom. And honestly, they have really helped me cut down and nearly eliminate my Sunday Scaries. So without further ado, let's dive into our first episode called Go Back Better. We're going to start off with a story for this episode. So when I was like maybe 6 or 7 years old, I coined this phrase that I called can't wait tummy aches. And what that actually was just like undiagnosed anxiety that we didn't know about. But I remember ever since I was a little kid, just feeling so much like so many butterflies, but not always good butterflies, thinking about going back to school after a break. And that's something that, spoiler alert, has not stopped in adulthood, but it is something that over the past couple of years, I have learned how to harness and kind of to quiet the anxiety that comes with going back to school after a break. So these are some things that I currently do to make it easier on myself and on my students when we return to school after an extended period of time. The first thing that I do when we go back to school is I hold a reset circle with my students. So what is a reset circle, you might ask? If you had to picture like a responsive classroom circle where everybody's like sitting in a circle like that, talking with a talking piece, but take away like some of the structure from it, that's a reset circle, okay? So what we do is when we come back to school, the first first class I have with all of my different sections of classes, we do our bell ringer, but then we immediately form a circle. And if our reset circle is going to be pretty short and sweet, I have all of the students just move their bodies out of the chair and we sit on the floor in a circle, myself included. And I also really emphasize us all being on the floor or us all being in chairs. And that's very strategic because I want my students to feel like we are all on the same playing field. We're all at the same level, and like physical level is important for that. I don't want my students to be looking up at each other or looking down at each other or looking up or looking down at me. I want us all to be eye to eye as we reset and get ready to go back to school for the next period of time until our next break. Picture this. We are all in the classroom. We're all sitting on the floor in a circle, and I have a talking piece, which honestly, since I teach middle school, it's typically something pretty unusual, like a rubber chicken or like a stuffed Shrek ball, like just something to engage the middles, So we have that talking piece, and I keep it really short and sweet. So the first thing I typically do after a break is I have them tell me in 1 or 2 words how they feel right now. So it might be tired, excited, nervous, stressed, worried, whatever their feeling is. And honestly, it might not be a bad idea to just toss out a few emotion vocabulary words for the class, because talking to my social worker friend, there is such a deficit of language when it comes to explaining our own feelings as humans, adults included. So giving your students some feeling sentence starters or some different vocabulary words could also help with this process. But we go around and we share how we feel coming back to school right now, and also what we're looking forward to doing this week or this weekend. I don't make every student participate, although I do really encourage it, but we all do go around, myself included, and we share that. But here's the important part. After you share that and you find out how your students are right now, make an action based on that. So for example, one time my students told me that they were so exhausted and tired coming back from Thanksgiving break. And so you know what we did? I turned the lights off, we closed our eyes, and we had a 2-minute nap time.
Not me, just the kids.
You have never seen 20-something 12-year-olds so grateful as they were when we had our 2-minute nap time. After we took our 2-minute nap time, I had the class stretch. All in all, this took us less than 5 minutes. And I had a class of students who felt heard, and we had a great lesson after that because I didn't fully meet their basic need, but I at least acknowledged it, and I tried to do what I could to meet it as their teacher. So moral of that story is when your students are saying how they feel coming back, use that feedback to make a decision as a teacher about what you can do in your classroom to make the environment better for them and for you. The second thing I do to make going back less anxiety producing is to plan something engaging and fun that I want to teach when we go back. So for example, when we go back to school in January, we are starting a writing unit. And if you've seen my posts on social media, you know that I have a love-hate relationship with teaching writing. And so going back, I did not want to dread beginning a new essay. So we're doing something different. We're going to be turning our classroom into writing land, which picture Candyland meets an informational essay, and that's what I am trying to create in the classroom. I do not want my students or myself, honestly, coming back, being bored this first week back from break, especially after having fun, having it be exciting, be able to do what you want. So planning a lesson that I'm looking forward to teaching, and my students will probably look forward to doing, makes it more enjoyable going into work every day. Whereas if we were reading a story that I didn't like or doing worksheets or something more boring and monotonous, it'd be a lot harder to convince myself to get out of bed and to put on that happy smiley face going into school with my students. But being able to plan lessons that I enjoy teaching makes it easier to go back. The third thing I do when going back to school after a long break to make it a bit easier is I embed treats in my week. So this could be literal treats like Starbucks and donuts and all those amazing things, or it could just be something fun like meeting up with friends after work, or playing a game with your students. But having treats that you can look forward to throughout the week makes it a lot easier to leave that beautiful winter break mode that we were on before and get back into the swing of things. Also, your students will probably love you for it if you embed some more fun things into their week, even if it's just a 2-minute brain break or something like that. One of my favorite memories as a teacher, I kid you not, has been having random dance parties with my students where they're just working, and I'll just blast party in the USA for a solid 2 minutes and we all have fun and then get back to work. work. It's such a great bonding experience. It lightens the mood and it makes it more enjoyable being at work. And we got to be there for 7-8 hours every day. Might as well enjoy it. So embed those treats, embed those smiles, those laughs, those things that you can look forward to in your week before you go back, and it'll make it a bit easier for you to go back, I bet. The fourth thing that you can do to go back even better is to pre-plan your response to headaches that are going to occur. So what I mean by that is if you are thinking about going back, how behaviors are going to stress you out, how paperwork is going to stress you out, whatever that stressor is that typically gets to you, make a plan for what you're going to do when you feel that stress level building up in your body. So for me, one of the things that used to stress me out a lot my first couple of years teaching was managing behaviors. And I would get so worried and hyped up about what if this student does this, what if this happens, what if this happens again. And it was just a miserable cycle of worrying about all these things that could go wrong. And so what I started doing is pre-planning a response when those problem behaviors arise. So what I mean by that is if you teach middle school like me, and you know that you're probably going to have a kid say something outrageous and interrupt your lesson, what are you going to do about it before it even happens? And when you have that pre-made response ready to go, it really cuts down the anxiety you feel when you're up in front of 20 plus people and that happens. You already know what you're going to say. You already know how you're going to handle that situation. I actually do have a free resource if this would be helpful for you. It's linked in my Teachers Pay Teachers store, but it basically gives you an area where you can map out a behavior that might occur and then what your response to it would be. And it gives you a few different scenarios to consider as well. So if that's something you're interested in, I will link it in the description box and then you can use it. And again, it's free. So help yourself or make your own. But having that plan will cut back or cut down on your anxiety so much because you're not going to be worrying about all of the what ifs. You'll have a plan to work with in case one of those situations that you're worried will happen actually happens. And finally, let's talk about the fifth thing I do to go back to school strong after a break. But before I do that, quick disclaimer, in case you're watching this on YouTube, you might notice it's a bit darker in here. That's because my microphone went out and I didn't realize it till I was in the editing process. So we're re-recording it right now. But anyways, my fifth strategy, and don't laugh, it's to be yourself. Also, don't stop playing the podcast because I know that sounds extremely corny, and I'm going to explain to you what I mean by be yourself in the classroom. I always heard that as a first-year teacher, and I was like, okay, be yourself, like whatever, I don't even know what that means. But what I think it means, and what I've made it mean for myself, is think about who you are when you are on break mode. Maybe you're an adventurer, maybe you're sarcastic, or just a goofball, or whoever you are as an individual, bring that person into the classroom. When I was a first-year teacher, and honestly a second-year teacher, a little bit of a third-year teacher too, I thought I had to be a certain way because I was Miss. I thought that teachers acted a certain way, and so I needed to handle behaviors like a teacher would. I had to address my students like a teacher would, but I didn't address them the way I just operate. And what that did is it made me have to code switch every single day from just being Ashlyn to being Miss. And that flipping of the switch is just so exhausting. And I honestly think that's one of the biggest things that burns teachers out because you are acting for like 7-8 hours a day and that's not maintainable. All right, so maybe you're thinking, great, I know who I am outside of the classroom. I know who I am in the classroom, but how do I go about combining those things and being myself in the classroom? Here's what I think you can do. This upcoming week, manufacture, like you create 3 opportunities where you can just showcase who you are. Maybe you want to show some pictures. Maybe you want to do a funny dance or tell a story. But make those 3 small moments where you can let the students into who you are as a person, who you are as your first name, not just who you are as Miss or Mr. or Mix. And keep manufacturing these opportunities until you don't have to manufacture them anymore, until it becomes second nature. I'll never forget when the pandemic first started and I got on TikTok like like a bunch of us teachers got on TikTok then, I was like, dang, like my students would be like, who is this person if they saw my TikTok videos? Because I felt like I was such a character in the classroom that wasn't truly who I was as a person. So going back to school in the fall of 2020, because we were in person, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to be who I am unapologetically, and we'll see what happens. It's going to be a crazy year anyways. And it is one of the best things I have ever done. One more thing going off of that, and on kind of the same note as acting in a way that you think a teacher should act, not just how you feel personally, a big way that exhausted me as a beginning teacher was how I viewed classroom management. I thought that teachers had to be so strict, that I had to make sure students knew that I was the boss, that I was in charge, that my authority wasn't questioned. And not only did it create a not so great environment, but we can talk about that later, it also was so exhausting to always be on offense and defense. I felt like I had to put out every single fire, like playing whack-a-mole every day, trying to keep everything contained. And that's just not manageable. And so when I was reflecting on all of these things going into the 2020-2021 school year, I was like, well, my management style, just as a person, it's more conscious. It's more aware of social interactions and empathy and how people feel. So why was I not bringing that into the classroom? Like, why was I a whole separate person with rewards and points and all these things when in reality, I never do that? And so I decided to start treating my students like people, just like humans, and just having genuine interactions with them. So once I realized how much my own personal relational philosophy differed from how I acted in the classroom, I decided to change things completely. And I just operated like how I do in the world in my classroom. I became much more responsive, much more conscious. Think like gentle parenting meets teaching in the classroom. And I honestly created like an entire behavior management system that I call Levels, which is like an management system. It's basically teaching kids or trying to get kids to come into the classroom, be respectful, make good choices, be responsible. Not because they'll get stars or points or tickets or whatever if they do that, but because they want to do that, because that's how they treat their space, because they value their education and they value me as their teacher and each other as individuals. And changing my philosophy on classroom management, using that level system, that has really helped me be myself in the classroom, and it has taken away so much stress and so much anxiety that I had associated with the profession beforehand. Also, quick sidebar, in case you want to learn more about the levels management system, this is actually the prime time for it, because on January 8th, my friend Shelby from Forever Finding X and I are going to be teaming up with hopefully a social worker too, and we're going to hold a live class where I talk about how I've seen the levels management system revolutionize my classroom management. And Shelby's also going to be talking about how you can get through tough days as a teacher. And then my social worker friend is hopefully going to be able to give us some strategies as teachers to use when it comes to working with our own mental health in this profession, and also maybe some strategies that can help our students as well. This class is going to be happening live on January 8th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you want to register, feel free to click the link in the description box or in any of my social media profiles. It'll be there. And your registration also comes with the levels management resource in its entirety. And I know that Shelby has a few awesome things made for you as well. All of that being said, to come full circle, the 5 things I do to go back better after a long break and to cut down on the Sunday scaries and just the back from break scaries is to have reset circles, to plan engaging lessons I'm looking forward to teaching, to embed treats in the day, in the week for myself and for my students, to make an action plan for things that I know are going to give me headaches and that I'm dreading to do going back, and to also make sure I'm authentically being myself in the classroom so that I don't feel exhausted and like I've been acting all day by the time 2 p.m. rolls around. I really hope that these strategies were helpful for you, and if they were, please let me know. I would love to hear it, either in the podcast. I don't think you're able to comment. I honestly don't know. But if you're watching on YouTube, in the comments there, or in my social media, in my messages, or on a post, I truly love hearing from you. And stay tuned, because I'm excited to continue recording episodes and sharing some things I've learned over the years with you. As always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all that you do as an educator. And as always, you've got this.